Good. Good evening. Welcome to the February 15th Public Works session of the Rockville Center Board of Education. Please rise for the pledge. Mr. Gavin, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to follow up on a couple of items that came up at our last board meeting. Number one, in terms of the club hockey team that several of our students play on, we did some research. We were able to recognize the students that play for the club hockey program at last week's pep rally. The students and the parents were very happy about that. This step is really in line with what most districts have done in terms of how they recognize kids that are in the league. Everyone kind of does something a little bit different. Some people do pep rally, some people do like a yearbook page or something like that. And we felt like this was a common sense step. And I really think, I just got, one of the parents said that the boys absolutely loved it. So they were really happy about that. We just wanted to do that. This was a good way, a public way to recognize the kids and their achievements. So I wanted to update the public on the hockey team. Second, we had some questions about the video for high school sports, about where we would put the video in the gym and what the audio would be. There might not necessarily be a better angle, but we might have to take a look maybe this summer about what the audio could be involved with. Like we might have to have the microphone actually away from where the actual camera is, if that makes sense. So let's say Chris Colasanti is announcing the game. He might sit where he typically sits, so he's not in the audience, but we might be able to have to move that camera to the other side and not have the volume on that, if that makes sense. So that's something we're going to look at for next year, and we're going to do a little work on that this summer. The other couple things I wanted to close the loop on. One of the things that came up at the last board meeting was the idea that we would have the sign-off sheet and make sure that that's in practice about equipment and practice in winter sports. We followed up with that. It is in practice in gymnastics. They would need that equipment sign-off, but like track would not. So, and it will be in practice for everything in the spring that has equipment that would need to be checked in on. So all of that has been done. I wanted to close the loop on that. The pep rally, I wanted to congratulate Dr. Walsh, Liz Marshall, Patricia Takish, Mr. Colasante, Ms. Green, and Anthony Zito for their work organizing the pep rally. Special thanks goes to Mr. Jason Colson, who was one of our teacher assistants, who did an awesome job not only dancing and revving up the crowd, but teaching Patrick Walsh to dance. So that was a monumental accomplishment that Jason was able to do, and it brought back, it was really exciting. Really excited. We also had like a little basketball rally, and one of the best things that I've seen all this year, we had a little basketball relay race. One of our students was not that successful, and he was the last person to kind of go. As soon as he hit that last thing, the whole place exploded. And it was really a nice feel-good moment. The high school's in a really good spot in terms of where the kids are and their connection to the school. And I think it really revved up some of our teams. Our teams are in a good spot. I want to congratulate, we have conference champion boys basketball, conference champion girls basketball. We have our students that are in the finals for the county finals for track, that are running for track. We had several county winners in terms of our swimming team, our boys swimming team, and gymnastics are also competing now too. So all at a very high level. We're super excited, and I think the pep rally kind of gave them that feel as we push on through the playoffs. So that was wonderful. I also want to compliment Dr. Walsh for actually getting out there and dancing. That is not an easy thing, and he did it, and he did it with style. Today, I also want to just remind everyone that our partnership with the Ed Foundation is tremendously valuable as we get ready to go into the spring season. I attended an Ed Foundation grant class with a remote artist, Reggie Laurent, who was at the middle school today. I got a chance to really interact with the artist and our 8th graders that were in our class. It was a lot of fun, and if I can paint, anybody can paint. So I don't know if it's good. I wouldn't qualify it as good, but other than the fact that I got some all over my jacket, other than that, it was a really fun experience, and the kids had a great time. So again, that goes back to the Ed Foundation and supporting unique opportunities for our kids. Some of the kids' work in there was so good that you're like blown away about what they can do. So thank you for that. We also today at Wilson had a very unique opportunity. We had to meet with one of the co-founders of Goat USA clothing line. I know if your kids may play a little sports from time to time and you go to a tournament, they are vendors pretty much everywhere. And he's a local Long Beach guy, and his name is Mr. TJ Christina. And he came and he talked to the kids about what it's like to be an entrepreneur and what it's like to really work hard and hustle. And the kids loved it, as about 80 of them in Wilson, 4th and 5th grade, were sitting there wearing Goat stuff. So they obviously got the branding piece for that. But it was just another connection to somebody who's local that says, this is what you can do if you put your mind and your heart to it. So I thought it was really great. Kudos to everyone at Wilson for pulling that together on short notice. I would ask Ms. Love to kind of give us a little bit update on where we are with UPK. Ms. Love.
We working now? There we go. Hi, so very exciting. It's at that time of year now where we're getting ready to invite our families who've submitted applications of interest for our UPK. So the closing window for that is Friday, February 17th. Right now, we have approximately 120 families that are showing interest. Starting on the 17th, all of those families will be notified that they can register their children. And as long as the registration numbers are within the seat allowance that we have with the JCC, we're hoping to include all of the families that have shown interest. If for some reason we are over the seat number and there is a lottery, we will inform the community on the closing date of registration, which will be March 3rd. So there's a little bit more time left to go. We've had great interest, but we do think that the numbers that we have, we're hoping that we'll be able to accommodate all of our families.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Love. That is the first part of my report, Madam President. But I think we are ready to go with Mr. Bartels and our first budget presentation. As the board knows, last time we met, we talked a little bit about some of the different curricular proposals for next year. And now we're going to talk about, the numbers and how that impacts budget. And the curriculum part will come next. This is really administration and some of the capital work. So, Mr. Bartels, take it away.
Thank you. So, yes, we are going to continue our discussions. I just also wanted to mention that I'm going to roll at the end of this presentation right into the capital needs. So it's kind of incorporated at the end of this presentation. What we're going to do tonight, I'm going to review a few slides that we had done for my first presentation. I have a couple of updates on those slides. Talk about some of the challenges that we're going to face, that we are facing in this budget. Go through some of the highlights of what is in the budget, and then we'll get into more specifics. Tonight we're going to start with administration, benefits, and capital. The detailed budget is available on the district website. It was posted with this agenda, and there's also a copy outside. As far as the budget schedule, we're kind of right in the middle there on February 15th. That's what we're up to. Administration, benefits, and capital. All this culminates again with the annual election and budget vote on May 16th. Tonight, again, we're doing administrative benefits, capital, curriculum, and PPS will be at the next budget meeting, and then we'll do music and the arts and phys ed athletics on March 23rd. So where are we? Our total budget increase right now is 5.72%. That is higher than we have been in the past. But what it does include is an additional infusion of $2.5 million more of capital. So the actual budget, if we had not increased the capital line, would be 3.79%. So again, without that infusion, that's what we would be doing. That's more in line with what our budget increases have been over the last number of years. How are we going to fund that? We start with the tax levy. This year, our tax levy calculation, the levy limit, I actually brought it up at the last presentation. It was a 2.04 tax levy limit. We actually got different information now from the assessor's office, Nassau County Assessor. They provided us with incorrect information first time around, so we got updated growth factors. That actually increased our tax levy limit from 2.04 to 2.21, which would become our tax levy limit. We are not planning on changing our tax levy. We put this together with a 1.99% tax levy. That's what we feel comfortable with. We don't have any plans to increase it beyond that. The next piece is our state aid. Our state aid is up overall 17.8%. Most of that is due to foundation aid, and I'll talk about that again in a little bit. Our other revenues, we've had increases and decreases in some of our revenues. We've had increase in our interest income with interest rates rising, but we're down on our tuitions from our out-of-district students, and that's due to some lower tuition rates and from students who have moved out of the program. We're also going to be applying fund balance. Each year, we apply $2.8 million in fund balance, and I'm going to have actually a slide on this in just a minute. But we provide $2.8 million every year from one budget to the next. We're utilizing ERS and TRS reserves of $800,000. We did that last year. We plan on using that again for next year. And a one-shot infusion from our fund balance of $2.5 million. So that's directly to cover those expenses of the increased capital. It's something we felt we could use in a one-time. It's not something we could put in with a recurring expense, so it'd have to be a one-time expense because we then need to replenish our fund balance. But that's how we're planning on paying for that extra $2.5 million in capital for next year. So that comes up to our total funding to match what our budget increase is expected to be. As far as our state aid, you can see this top line is our total state aid, and it's broken down below that is the foundation aid line. So you can see it's basically following what's happened to our foundation aid. Our other main aids, BOCES aid, transportation and building aid, and then there are a few other smaller aids, have been relatively stable over the last several years, so that really hasn't given us any real change. So it's the foundation aid that's really been put in place to give us more money. And this will be the end of the increase of our foundation aid. So we were kind of shorted in the last several years. The state had made a promise to get everybody whole by the end of, by next year's budget, and that's why we see the uptick in that foundation aid. This is a slide I had at the last meeting, and what I kind of want to point out here is the $2.8 million in the yellow at the bottom, that's the annual amount. This is all fund balance, but how much of it do we apply to the following year's budget? So it used to be we were just applying the $2.8 million, which is the yellow section, from one year to the next. We've been very consistent with that. Our fund balances hadn't really been changing that much over the years. Then in 16, 17, we started to add additional fund balance. So we had created reserves, employee retirement system reserves, and we started to use that to help in funding the ongoing budgets. So that helps deflect some of the costs so we don't have to spend it all on the taxpayers. So we're really using more of our fund balance every year. We were using about the same amount every year up until this year. And then from this year into next year, as you can see over the last 3 years with really the impact of COVID, and we were able to put away more money. We had fewer expenses. We were given additional funding from the federal government for different COVID expenses that actually allowed us to increase our fund balance over the last several years. So that's why we felt we wanted to take part of that fund balance and apply it towards some capital projects, we felt desperately needed capital projects to go forward. So that's why you see kind of that large circle in that final year of what we plan on using our fund balance for next year. So we're going to take part of that undesignated fund balance and kind of that same amount of our reserves to fund next year's budget. This chart shows what our budget history has been and our tax levy has been over the last 10 years. And as you can see, the green line is the tax levy, the red line is the budget. So we've been keeping our tax levy increase less than our budget increases for the last number of years. And the fact that our tax levy is probably 30 million less than what our budget is, that's still not giving us, so the percentages are off a little bit. So we've been able to generate additional revenues to continue to help to fund our budget, so we have not had to have any real spikes in our tax levy. The two lines I have for next year are, one is what our budget will be with that extra $2.5 million, and the other shows that we would actually be showing a little smaller increase next year than we had this year if we did not have that additional $2.5 million increase. It also shows that our tax levy will actually be down, the increase will be down a little bit from what it was for this year. So I want to point out, we did have, in that manipulation of fund balance and everything, I did want to point out again that we did have a 1 year where we had no tax levy increase, in 21-22. I think that was a great thing that we were able to do for everybody, and just important that, we do have that appreciation for the taxpayer and the concern everybody has about taxes, because it affects all of us. So some of the budget challenges we're facing in this budget. First is the health insurance. Our premium increases, we found out a little over a couple of months ago, are going to be increasing 15% for our active employees and 22% for our retirees for next year, which really is a tremendous increase. Kind of caught us a little bit by surprise, so that's a very large increase in our budget, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the benefits discussion later. Transportation contract increases. Every year we roll forward with our transportation contracts. We increase them at a CPI. The way the state has our contracts written is we use a May to May CPI, which makes it difficult for school districts. We've had our meetings with our legislators every year. We used to do it in March. We, ask them every year to see if they can change that and put it back to a January to January CPI, so we know going into the budget season what those increases are. We didn't do that, so for this current year, we found out last May that there were going to be 6.3% increases in our contracts. So that was a big increase for this year. Again, we don't know what they're going to be for next year. The way the CPI is going, we may have some similar increases like that for next year. We have been going out in some of our bids through Nassau County consortiums and looking at other ways to try to reduce those costs. We try to do that every year. It gets more and more difficult because we keep refining it every year, and different opportunities keep getting lost. But if we have another very large increase, we may have to go look at possibly bidding this out again to see what that is. And problem with doing that is every time we go out to bid, you're really taking a chance. So while you may see a 5 or 6% increase in the CPI, if you go out to bid, you could see a 10 or 12% increase. So it's always a risk, so we'll have to kind of keep our eye on that one. Our utility costs are increasing, electric, gas, as homeowners see that, just everybody sees it in the economy. We're getting the same increases as a school district. Teachers' retirement system is increasing for next year. Every year for both the employees' retirement system and teachers' retirement system, the school district is required to provide employer contributions into those systems. Fortunately for us, the employees' retirement system is basically flat for next year, so we don't see any increases in those costs, but the teachers' retirement system looks like about a 0.5% increase. 0.5% would be about $300,000 to our costs. So, even small increases there make a big difference. Our TANs, our tax anticipation notes, we're seeing higher interest rates, so there'll be a higher budget figure for that for next year. On the opposite side of that, we do see higher interest income, so there's an offsetting impact to that expense. We have cyber security increases and protections that we have to add. The issue of hacking and security of our computer networks continues to be a concern, so we have some additional budgeted monies for those programs. Our special ed placements every year, we continue to look at those, look at what students have to go out to other programs, BOCES or private placements, what students we have at those placements that we might be able to bring back to the school district. So we're always looking for what's in the best interest of the students, not just a monetary figure. We need to do what's best for the students in those situations. And the last thing here is COVID funding is ending. So we've had a number of different programs that are being funded through COVID. Some of our salaries have been funded through COVID, so those are getting transferred back into the regular budget. Some of the things we've had funded were some of our custodial and security funding. Academic support, a social worker has been funded through that. All of that is now in our regular budget for next year. Our before and after school programs, they've been of great assistance to students. We don't want to stop those or cut back on them, so we've got monies in the budget to cover those to continue. Regents Review, we had offered for free last year. This year, we have a small fee associated, so we're funding partial costs of that. We want to continue to do that going into the future, so we've got additional monies in the budget to take care of that. Our revenue picture actually looked really good this year, especially with that state aid. Our foundation aid, as I mentioned, is going to be fully funded. This is the third and the final year of the increase that we're going to be getting. So foundation aid in and of itself is up $3.3 million, or 36%. So that's, we were one of the districts that got a really large influx of that foundation aid. Our other expense-driven aids, not as great, dropped just a little bit. The reason for that is our state aid ratio numbers. Every year, the state calculates ratio numbers based on income and wealth. Our ratio numbers dropped by about 2 percentage points for all three expense-driven categories, BOCES, building, and transportation. The reason for that, I believe, is in their calculations, they use part of the calculations is assessment data, and they're running on kind of a 5-year lag. So with all the reassessments that have been done in Nassau County, you may recall I used to say that it was kind of funny that Nassau County would say an average home in Rockville Center was down to like $400,000. Well, now it's back up to $800,000 or $900,000. That increase in that assessment impacts our state aid ratios. So, but it's on a lag, which is why our ratios had been going up. We now see that they're kind of ticking down a little bit. So that reassessment that Nassau County did is finally kind of kicking in. So we're hoping it's not going to have too much more of an impact, but we're going to, again, keep our eye on that. So our overall aid increase is really up $3 million. Or about 17.5% from what we're getting for this current year. Our interest income, great, very significant. It's going to more than offset the increase in the tax anticipation note expense. We are looking at a much larger budget. We were down less than $100,000 in interest income over the last 3 or 4 years. It's been a way that we've been able to fund our budget in the past, but we've had to back off on those numbers. We were down to $100,000 as a budgeted revenue. We plan to have about $600,000 next year in that revenue. So assuming interest rates stay anywhere close to where they are now, we should have more than $600,000 in revenue in interest income based on our investments. Our Project Great program is strong. After a couple of years with COVID and parents trying to keep the kids home a little bit, seems like we're back to full enrollment, and we have a very strong program. We'll be able to increase a little bit some of our revenues with that, and that's all based on additional students. It's not based on increasing the amount that we're charging. So that rate has stayed fairly consistent. We have more students in the program. Our non-resident tuitions, this is part that's been down a little bit. Again, students graduating from the program, we've had a little lower in our tuition formula. The state generates a tuition formula every year. So our tuition formula has dropped a little bit, so that combined with the reduction in students has brought that number down quite a bit. We're looking at a reduction of about $900,000 in our projected revenues for that. Our pilot payments are still increasing. We get approximately $50,000 more each year. We don't see any drop-off in any of our pilots over the next several years. Again, we continue to look at that. We had a couple that were about to come off, and they were extended, so that's why we are continuing to see an increase. But every year, we're looking at approximately $50,000 more in pilot payments. We're up to almost $1.1 million pilot payments now. And again, what pilot payments are payments in lieu of taxes. They're mostly apartment complexes that have gotten abatements. They pay a separate amount, and that comes outside of our taxes. It's an amount supposedly similar to what they would pay if they were on the tax rolls, but because it's outside the tax rolls, it's a separate source of income. And that's one of those items that is taken into account when they calculate what your tax cap is. Health services. Health services bills, we have out-of-district students who attend St. Agnes. We bill the other districts that send their students to St. Agnes for health services. In turn, students from Rockville Center that go to Chaminade or St. Anthony's or Holy Trinity, we have to pay health services for those students. But this is one where our tuition rates actually went up a little bit. We're getting a little bit more in tuition for the health services, so that's a positive. As far as budget highlights, when we build the budget every year, we really kind of start from zero and recalculate everything. So I will go in, for example, to a budget line, and I'll look at who is in that budget line every year. And so there's changes in staff every year. Some people change buildings, some people retire. We have additions of staff. So I have to go into every budget line every year, see who's in there, project that budget line going forward. So we really rebuild the budget each year from the bottom up. There are certain budget lines that make it difficult to kind of track every once in a while. So in this current year's budget, you may recall we had an increase of $1.2 million for additional staff for the ICT program. That number was put in one budget code to include all of the numbers because we weren't sure at the time where those staff members were going, into which buildings, and how much it was all going to cost. Well, since that time, those staff members have been hired, they've been put into different budget codes, but a good portion of that $1.2 million was for health insurance, was for Social Security, FICA, was for our employees' retirement system. So those numbers are now in those particular budget codes. So you'll see when we get into the special education budgets, you'll see a big drop in that. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing a big drop in our special education budget, is because we had a bigger number in there and it's being split out. In a similar way, in this budget, we're actually expecting a number of retirements this year. So I have one budget line. So everybody I have is rolled forward into next year, but I have one budget line for a breakage amount of about $700,000. So you're not going to see that in any individual line, but you'll see one line in the budget with a reduction of $700,000 to account for all of that. And then again, next year, I'll have to go into each budget line where those people actually retired from, make those changes, same with health insurance, same with Social Security and FICA. So it's a big project we go through every year to try to do that. And sometimes it makes it difficult to track certain budget lines from one year to the next. So that's why I say we have to look at everything very carefully. All the programs we have currently, we're rolling forward into next year. We're not cutting any programs. We're actually adding a number. Our cybersecurity protections, we've added. We don't want to get into what those are because that actually becomes an issue for the hackers, because they'll then know what to look for and what they can or can't do within Rockville Center. So just wanted to say that we do have increased protections there. We do plan to move to the integrated co-teaching model at both the middle school and the high school. We have an added emphasis on coding and robotics, and both of those were talked about by Mr. Gavin in his discussion at the last board meeting. And the other programmatic modifications, I kind of just put a link in this presentation so people at home can click on that. That goes back to Mr. Gavin's presentation. A lot more information on that than I could provide here. So, also, we're going to get into additional curricular discussions at the next budget meeting. Some other budget highlights is we are going to increase some of our teams, this time more at the middle school. We have plans to put in JV volleyball for boys and JV volleyball at the high school, and middle school volleyball. Also middle school winter track for both boys and girls. Also at the middle school for girls fall cheerleading and winter cheerleading. So that's a number of additional programs, other opportunities for students. At the high school, we are updating our basement locker room, which is used for football and lacrosse. We've had increases in those programs, so we have additional changes we need to make to support that in the locker room. Also, the additional supplies required for those programs. So you'll see a large increase in the supplies, mostly for football and lacrosse for that participation. Some of the other increases are due to the additional teams. There's also increases in transportation and BOCES fees, again, due to the teams that we're adding and the additional transportation costs that are going to be required. As far as capital work, I mentioned the $2.5 million we wanted to add. The two main projects that we want to do are, as Mr. Gavin has stated a number of times, the middle school roof. That has continued to be a problem. We've tried to do a number of other patches. None of them have really worked. This will really replace the majority of the roofing, the main pitched roof, and several other roofing spots at the middle school. So we're really hoping that's going to go a long way towards solving some of the water problems that we're having there. In addition, we want to do a new artificial turf field at the middle school. We've tried to repair that field a number of times. We've tried to put in additional drainage. We still have flooding problems. The field use is way down. There's a number of times that it cannot be used, and even when it is used, sometimes it's dangerous because of the ruts and so forth. It does get an awful lot of use, so we would like to put in a turf field there. I know there have been some concerns about putting in artificial turf, but there have not been any correlative studies from the EPA on this. Actually, the EPA came out with a report, said that human exposure in those things are limited. They will not provide an assessment of whether it is risky or not risky. It's not a risk assessment that they provide, so they don't advocate for or against it. So they have done studies on it, have not come up with anything that correlates any issues with that. That's it. I'll start with the administration budget. That budget is about $13.3 million, which is a little less than 10% of our overall budget. The items in these budgets are basically what starts out as our 1000 series budget codes. They include the Board of Education, which is the district clerk and budget votes, includes expenditures in the superintendent's office, the business office, all of our auditors. We have, this is a big year for auditors. We have in addition to our claims auditor who comes in every couple of weeks to review our payments, we have our internal auditors, we have our external auditors. We have state auditors. They've been in to see our school lunch program in the past year. They're doing a regular state audit. They're in the middle of that right now. We're going to be going through another audit from including the state and federal auditors on our COVID funding. They'll be beginning, well, we actually started that, but we're actually going to be audited by them beginning, I think we have to have our information in by March 2nd, and then they're going to visit with us on beginning of April. So we have lots of audits going on. Our legal expenses are covered out of these codes. Human resources and personnel, public information, our communication systems, all of our facilities, buildings and grounds, maintenance and security staff are in the administration budget. Data processing, a lot of our computer programs, our administrative software, all of our printing and mailing costs, all of our general insurances, liability, auto, umbrella, and our BOCES administrative costs. Our BOCES administrative costs, we participate in BOCES, as do all Nassau County districts. Everybody is allocated a certain percentage of their administrative costs based on the enrollment. So they basically base our costs, our enrollment divided by total Nassau County enrollment. That's what our percentage of their administrative costs are. What has changed in those budgets? Big changes we have, Mr. Murphy is now the assistant to the superintendent for human resources, so that had to be added into the personnel budget. Our public information budget has increased by $15,000. We plan on providing a newly designed calendar to replace our older calendar, make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more professional. Our facilities budget, which really makes up 60% of the overall administrative budget, that has our electrical and natural gas increases, which we're seeing 15 to 30% increases in those areas. That's going to be about $150,000. Maintenance contracted services, we continue to do small projects around the district. That's up about $50,000, as well as maintenance supplies. Our carpenter has been extremely busy doing lots and lots of work around the district. Right now, he's in the middle of that basement renovation for the locker room, for what we need to do for that. So there's additional funding in there for the supplies that we're requiring to do those in-house projects. We also have our own plumber, electrician, and HVAC personnel, so they do a lot of the work themselves rather than us contracting out. We save a lot of money by having our own in-house people do that. So a lot of the upgrades that we see in our capital projects, like to LED lighting in classrooms and hallways, a lot of that is done by our electrician. Bathroom renovations are done by the plumber, and new air conditioning that we have to get put in by our HVAC person. We also have our security guards in there. I mention that because that has been a problem. We have money in there. We're actually down 2 security guards right now. We have one at the high school who's a floater who's covering for elementary absences and high school absences. But we're really short 2 from what we had budgeted, and we just, again, with issues we're seeing with a number of these lower level personnel, is it's hard to get them and retain them. So that continues to be an issue. Our data processing charges, we do have one recoding piece. There was a charge that had been paid for through our BOCES technology budget, with our large BOCES technology budget. That's being recoded here under data processing. There's a certain portion of that code that we don't get BOCES 8 on, so that's being paid now separately. That should be in that data processing code. I mentioned the cybersecurity upgrades. Again, upgrades of $50,000, but we actually spend well in excess of that on our security costs. And our general insurance costs are up about $60,000 for next year. Our benefits budget, very large portion of our budget, makes up about 23% overall. That includes the teachers and the employees' retirement system costs. That includes Social Security and FICA taxes, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, health insurance, and other contracted benefits that we have with our different bargaining units. Big changes here, as I mentioned earlier, are health insurance. And again, I have a slide on health insurance after this, talk about the changes that we've seen because they are very, very large. We have, health insurance actually is up about $1.6 million in the budget because of those premium increases. That's kind of from a hit for this current year and again for next year. So we're planning on a little smaller increase only because we're careful about how much we can fund in the budget. So I'm looking at the increases for the actual increases for this year plus about a 5% increase in 2024. So if we have a larger increase than 5%, we may be a little short on that. If we have a smaller budget increase, then we'll be in good shape. Our ERS and our TRS rates, as I said, the ERS is pretty much flat. TRS, we had a little extra in that budget for this year, so we only have to increase that by about $200,000 for next year is what we're looking at. Our Social Security and FICA increases are going to be up about $100,000 due to increased payroll costs. And again, because they keep raising the income limit for Social Security and Medicare taxes. So each year that number goes up, our numbers go up, and it hits any employees that are making above that cap. All right, so our health insurance rates. You can see these numbers are kind of all over the place. For any of the public watching, probably can't read. The red number is the family health insurance rate increase. The green number is the individual. So you see those increases kind of follow each other. Those are what we see for our active employees. The purple number is really the odd one. That has been all over the place. That's what our retirement costs are. So when employees are in retirement, we pay a portion of that health insurance. These are their increases. Last several years, those increases have actually been reduced. They haven't been increases, they've been decreases. So they've been reduced over the last several years. So with that large increase this year, we're still not as high as the premium was 5 years ago. So it's been kind of crazy to watch the rates. But in general, there have been very few times that they've been above 5%. So that's why I was kind of comfortable using 5% as a number. That's what I had used for this year. You know, we're going to be a little short on that, but now we have to make it up. Employer contribution rates have been a little bit more steady. These are not the changes in the rates, these are the actual rates that we're paying. So our employees' retirement system has been relatively flat. So a little bit of reduction for this year, it can go up a little bit for next year. TRS has been coming down, but is now kind of going up a little bit. You see a slight dip there for next year, but with our salary increases, that overall increase is going to go up. We have our capital budget. This is about 6% of our overall budget, $7.8 million. This includes the tax anticipation notes, where we have to borrow money to begin funding the district over the summer until we receive our tax notes until we receive our tax levy that starts coming in October and majority of it in November. So to get us through September and October with our payroll costs, we usually need to borrow a little bit of money. Again, we'll look as the increased costs come up, we're going to keep that number as low as possible for next year. Lease purchase agreements we have, these could be buses, they could be some technology equipment. Most of what we have in there right now is for musical instruments. So that's what we have there. We have debt service on previous bonds is in this budget, as well as the transfer to capital line. Changes for next year, TANs again are up about $130,000. That's what we're putting in due to the rising interest costs. Our lease purchases are up about $16,000 for a new lease purchase for a number of instruments. Our debt service is flat, so we're coming off of 2 years of reductions in debt service. The first year of reduction, we actually had about a $1.2 million reduction, about $800,000 reduction, but we combined that with a reduction in the transfer to capital line of another $600,000 there. That was one of the ways we were able to keep that tax levy at zero for 21-22. For this current year, we had another $600,000 in debt service drop off. We added the $600,000 back to the transfer to capital line, so we have $1.8 million in the transfer to capital line for the current year. So that was no impact, again, on the taxes. So you have that change, which is a great way to kind of keep the budget stable going forward. So we want to keep those numbers in there. So if and when we do have another bond and we have to issue more debt service, we can take money from that transfer to capital line because we're going to have a bond to pay for projects, so we won't need the transfer to capital. We can use that for debt service. Then as debt service starts dropping off again, we can build that transfer to capital line back up and just kind of use that. So we kind of minimize any impact on the taxpayer. Mentioned we're using the $2.5 million in reserves for the middle school roof and the field. So some of the other items that we have designated as projects for next year, and again, this is we've gone through, I know the board has gone through and toured the buildings again the winter. We've had requests from buildings, and in looking at everything, this is our list of items over the next couple of months. It may change. Some of these items may come off. We may add a couple, depending on what needs we feel we need for next year. So, but this is the list we have as of now. At Covert, we're again looking at additional lighting upgrades for classrooms and also classroom floors, so about 5 rooms of each. Also upgrading the lighting in the gym at Covert. At Hewitt, we are going to continuing. We started a project with drop ceilings in the hallways. We want to continue in the Hempstead Avenue side hallways. We plan to repair and refinish 5 classroom floors and to do some window shade and screen replacements as necessary. At Riverside, we want to paint various classrooms as well as the gym. We want to continue our work in the basement. We made a number of changes last summer. We want to continue that work with the Professional Development Center to get those upgraded in flooring, ceiling, and lighting. They would like to update some of their exterior lighting to get some better lighting outside. And I think everybody loves the epoxy flooring we're doing in the bathrooms, so they would like to continue that in some more of their bathrooms, as well as epoxy coating some of the walls, which would be another thing. So we'll have to see if that works out. We may get those requests from other buildings. At Watson, flooring replacements and lighting replacements in the 4th and 5th grade wing. They're also looking for additional exterior lighting, a new PA system. That's one of those ones we're going to have to really price out. It could become a very expensive project, so we'll really have to look at that, see what kind of numbers, what kind of estimates we get to see if we can keep that one in there. We also want to repair the masonry on the clock tower. Some of those bricks are starting to look a little ragged and need to get upgraded and make sure they're all safe around the building. At Wilson School, we had done some upgrades with air conditioning units, and we need to modify the main office and the nurse's office to get rid of some of the old units, clean those rooms up a little bit. They would like some classroom ceiling and lighting upgrades in 6 different rooms, a renovation of their library space, sanding and refinishing of some classroom floors, and to upgrade the faculty bathroom. At the middle school, they're looking for some additional bottle filling stations. They need to replace the bathroom partitions in the girls' locker room, which are apparently in various states of disrepair. Ceiling and flooring repairs in various classrooms, and replacing the waste lines in room 115. And again, the big projects being the roof and the field. High school, We want to put a sidewalk along the student parking lot. We've had a number of concerns with students walking through the high school parking lot, and with a lot of newer drivers and backing out. We've kind of been lucky in the past years. We haven't had any more incidents, but we would like to have a walkway along the side so students don't have to walk through the parking lot to get to their cars. We want to eliminate the skylight in the main stairwell. It has continued to cause us problems. We had replaced it a number of years ago, but it is still continuing to leak. Feeling as we really don't need the skylight there, and just close the whole thing up and to get rid of that issue, since we're having leaks on stairs, which is not a good look or thing to have. Painting offices in the main office wing with some furniture replacements. I mentioned we're renovating the basement locker room, and we'll be adding a few more lockers. They are looking for some various classroom and office ceiling repairs, as well as student and staff bathroom upgrades, again with epoxy flooring. And again, administration building is also looking for epoxy flooring in the bathrooms. Also want to kind of review what projects we had for this year. Trying to go through those quick. We do have a couple projects still remaining because of the timing of everything, and we couldn't get those done over last year. We are up and ready to go as soon as school closes this year with both these projects, or all three of these. We have elevator repairs at both the middle school and the high school, which have to take those elevators out of service for about 4 weeks. There just wasn't enough time to get that ready for the summer to make sure it was ready for the beginning of school, but they're going to start that as soon as school's out this year. Also, repainting of the high school track. Again, very limited opportunities to do that over the summer months. We are on schedule and ready to go right at the beginning for that. I also should mention, we've been doing a lot of work with the architects and getting bids out for the roof and the field at the middle school to make sure that those also are going to happen this summer, so we don't get caught up with that and held off a year. So those are still planned for this summer. We've got assurances from both the architects and the contractors. Everybody's ready to go. So we will have a lot of work going on this summer. Some of the other items that were completed last year: covert, hallway and classroom lighting, floor replacements, an auditorium projector was installed. At Hewitt, we had the primary playground installed. That was actually funded through a grant from one of our state grants. Floor replacements were done in 3 classrooms, classroom ceiling installations, and the drop ceiling project in the hallways. They also had an auditorium projector installed at Hewitt. At Riverside, we renovated the faculty bathroom and other basement areas. We updated some of the classroom bathrooms, put in epoxy flooring in bathrooms, and we power washed some of the exterior spots and painted the front pillars. I think that made a big difference in the look of that building. Watson had some improved courtyard lighting. As I mentioned, that's why they're looking for more. They like that so much. We repaired the walkway in the front of the building and along the side. And we added an interactive camera for Project Great. At Wilson, we did a playground replacement. That was through the budget. They also had an auditorium projector installed and had some bathroom floor replacements. For the middle school, we did asphalt replacement in all of our parking lots, so virtually the entire asphalt area at the middle school was replaced last year. We added a handicapped entrance through a ramp at the front of the building that was funded through a state grant. And we replaced the auditorium ceiling and the music room ceilings. At the high school, we added a handicapped entrance at the main office. We actually just built up the front of that building, so we didn't need a ramp, that the sidewalk just naturally graded up to the doors. And we moved the network service out of the basement into a first floor space to eliminate some of the concerns we had with temperatures, keeping the temperatures down, as well as worries about water going down and damaging our network. So that kind of finishes the budget discussion. I kind of want to go right into the capital discussion of things we're looking at in the future. So Space has been an ongoing issue in all of our buildings. So we continue to look at that. We continue to have requests that don't make it into the budget because they're items that need bond issue work, and that's really for space increases. All the buildings are looking for cafeterias. A lot of them are looking for additional academic support rooms, additional classrooms. We have a lot of instruction going on in hallways. We're trying to get everybody into classrooms, but in some of the buildings, they just don't have the space. Enrollments, depending on the year, have really pushed some of our buildings to be very tightly packed and really looking for space. For a pre-K program, we don't have, with our space issues, we don't have enough space in our current buildings for the program. We're now seeing increased funding. With the governor's proposal, there was more money allocated for pre-K programming for more students, but not at any change in the rates. So it's the same rate where we can't get people to get the work done for that rate, and we're limited to, again, the same program we have. So again, we're looking at about a third of our, eligible population taking advantage of the pre-K program. And that program also is in Oceanside, which is one of the reasons I think it's not taking full advantage of. Parents really want their kids here, and they're still putting them in the programs that are in Rockville Center, so there's still interest in the program, but we just don't have space to do it within our current buildings. Some of the other issues that we have HVAC issues continually around the district. Coverts, gym, auditorium AC system has been an ongoing concern. We think the system that's there is really antiquated, even though it was put in 2003. I'm not sure it was really appropriately designed for that space. We continue to have air quality issues there and trying to keep it at an appropriate temperature. So we really need to get that looked at and replaced. We've had requests to air conditioning the high school gym for a number of reasons. A lot of the events that they have there. We have a budget vote. We have testing. A lot of student testing is done there. And I'm sure things like red and blue, people would love to have an air-conditioned space for red and blue with the number of people that are at that event. And our building management systems really need to be upgraded. That's the computer controls on the heating and air conditioning systems in the buildings. So while we have them, they're really two different systems in a lot of the buildings, and they don't work with one another. Some of them are very old, but to replace any of these systems are really expensive items, and I'm not sure we could do any of them within our regular year-to-year transfer to capital budget, or it would take up the whole thing. Fire alarm system upgrades, we need to do those in a number of our buildings. Site work, we did the middle school, we were able to get that one done for the parking lot. Hewitt was kind of the next one up. We were looking at that. We really, want to get that done as soon as possible. But pretty much all of our parking lots really need to get done. I know Coverts is looking for theirs as well. So a lot of site work that needs to be done. We constantly have issues with cracking sidewalks and repairs that we need to make there. Our athletic facilities, again, we have space issues in the buildings, we have space issues with our fields, everybody's looking for space. All of our local teams, community teams, or school teams looking for space, and that impacts different programs that we can offer to the kids. So we're constantly looking at what we can do for that. The gyms we have available for use are really open 24/7. The only days that we've kind of shut them down is on Sundays, with the exception of the middle school, which we kind of grandfathered in a number of years ago. But other than that, all of our buildings are used really all week long up until the end of the day, 10 o'clock at night. Practice space for red and blue. Just coming down here, we see, teams in the gym, in the cafeterias, looking for additional space, and that's just one team. So they kind of have to alternate where they practice. A lot of times they're doing their work and they're practicing in classrooms. So we'd love to have, more space for them to practice. And then just regular turf and track maintenance and repair. So again, we have to upgrade every so often the track, the field, we have to do repairs. We're doing the spray painting of the track, that's the next time up for the high school, that'll be done this summer. The middle school, we're going to be painting that track as well. So with the turf field, we would paint the track, get some newer equipment, new goalposts, and some other equipment there. We also plan, as we're doing that, to replace the fencing along Burtis and DeMott to kind of make it a better look there for everybody. But we continue to have issues with, or we're going to have issues with those replacements down the line. Roof replacements. We're doing the middle school roof. We have requests to do other roofs too. I think there's part of a roof here in the high school that still needs to be done. Roofs at other buildings, a lot of them are looking for roof replacements. They'll have a standard life, just like we all have at our homes. At some point, we need to replace the roofs. The roofs here, again, at some point will need to be replaced. Some other things, that's the end of my slides, but still go on. We still have window replacements, masonry repairs, plumbing and electrical upgrades, bathroom renovations. So these requests keep coming. We do as many as we can each year. We try to hit the ones that are most important. But sometimes the ones that are most important can't get done within the regular budget cycle. So that's why, sometimes we may need to consider a bond. So I just want to bring all of that to the board's attention and just kind of keep it on everybody's mind for discussion.
Thank you, Mr.
That's it.
Bartels. A couple things. First and foremost, thank you for a very comprehensive presentation about a wide range of topics tonight, anywhere from, the COVID audit to building management systems to, site work. It really laid everything out in terms of where we are financially. So thank you for that. The second thing I want to thank you for is putting us in a good financial position over your time here in Rockville Center. We are in an excellent financial position to be able to think about how we want to address all of these different problems or issues. So a couple of things for clarification. Number one, can you just, for the COVID funding audit, we're not being singled out, right? That's part of
No.
everyone is getting in different groups.
Correct.
For COVID auditing.
Yeah, the state is going through audits for all the COVID funding for every school district. The audits themselves are put together in groups, and from my understanding is there are different types of audits. So ours is called a targeted monitoring audit. There are, I think, 2 other types of audits that districts are going through, but every district is going to go through some audit. These audits are progressing. There are 5 or 6 rounds of audits. The first round is being finished up now for the first group. We are in the second group that's being audited, so we'll have the benefit that these auditors have been through other districts, once. So, hopefully any of the kinks in their auditing system have been worked out. They'll know what to ask for. They won't be shocked by documents that are or are not available. But we're fully confident that we have everything that they've asked for. They wanted us to upload a lot of the documents. A lot of the documents have to do with meetings that we've had, presentations that we've had at board meetings, communications with parents, the fact that we've done our presentations of what we're spending the money on. So they want to see that in board meetings. They want to see that in, that we've been transparent with the community about what we're doing. So we have all of that documentation, so we're not expecting that to be a problem at all.
I just wanted to make sure, sometimes people hear the word audit and think that we did something wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. They're auditing everyone for COVID money. The second thing I wanted just to point out is you really talked about the building management systems. And that doesn't sound like something that would be important, but it has cost savings implications too. So for example, one of our older buildings in Riverside, they have 2 different building management systems, neither of which are very efficient or work together. So for example, if it is 80 degrees on the second floor because heat rises, it might be 60 degrees on the first floor or in the basement, and you're constantly trying to blend out that heat all throughout the building. Matter of fact, one of our head custodian at Riverside says he spends a good deal of time in the morning trying to get to all the different rooms to make sure that the temperature is appropriate. So, building management systems don't sound like as exciting as a turf field, but I can tell you that they do build efficiencies over time where we could see cost savings. Really, at this point, we'd love to have a system where a custodian can come in, see the temperature in every room right on their phone or right on a tablet or something, and be able to make the subtle adjustments they need to that room in particular. So that's really where we'd like to get. That's really what the state of the art is. And it also lends itself, again, to energy efficiencies, which is very important in today. So thank you for including that. The other piece I just wanted to bring out was you really hit on a very important point when you talked about how the capital line could be used if we did any potential bond, how those two things work together to minimize the impact to the taxpayer. So can you just kind of go through that again? Because I thought that was super important the way you did that, and I just want to make sure everyone heard that part.
Sure. So it's always good to have some debt service in there. That means you are maintaining your buildings. So through a combination of transfer to capital and debt service, you have a good building maintenance program. You're continuing to upgrade your buildings and take care of them. What it allows you to do is kind of shift monies back and forth between those two lines. Both those lines are considered outside of the tax cap, so changes from one line to the other do not impact anything with regards to the tax cap. But you can take monies that are, 1 year assigned directly for a project, and then the following year's budget, move those into a debt service line, which will fund a bond should you issue one. There's other pieces to that. Obviously, we have to look at the overall. There's an impact of state aid, so there's building aid. So if you do bonds, in addition to shifting monies, there's also a revenue piece that comes into play. But those two lines of transfer to capital and debt service are used almost interchangeably to minimize that impact to the taxpayer. So, and that's really what we're looking to do. We like to build that number up a little bit. It's there. As I mentioned a couple of years ago, we actually reduced both lines because we saw an opportunity to keep the tax levy flat. So I thought that was more important than just offsetting the increase in the debt service. So we wanted to keep that tax levy flat, at least for the 1 year. So that's why we did that. But going forward, we want to make sure we use that line continually to balance the budget.
And I think, you see that when we have that line at an appropriate level, if we decide to do projects, we use it to do projects, right? So whatever that is, we would do that within the budget. If there was something where we decided to do much larger in a bond, we'd use that same money that we've already have built in to kind of offset anything that would be as an increase to the taxpayer in the bond itself. So that, if we discuss future bonds down the road, we want to be able to talk about that in the context of, trying to minimize the impact to the taxpayer. And that's done through sound budgeting, which Mr. Bartels has really done here. The other quick question I had was the health insurance, to clarify for the health insurance increase. We're seeing increases now. I think it's important that the communities know that we had some increases already this year, so we're already paying a portion of that increase from January to June. So they go from January to January in their budget. We go from obviously July to July. So it usually impacts 2 budget cycles. So we're fortunate enough that Mr. Bartels has really put us in a sound place, that this was not unanticipated for us. I mean, the number was, but we were able to really absorb that cost by working through things. So thank you for that. And those are my questions and clarifications. So I turn it over to you, Madam President, for questions and comments from the board.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bartels, for such a thorough explanation. It's no easy task to try to take everything that we're doing here with our proposed budget and explain it in a way that makes sense, not just what we're doing, but the why we're doing it and how we're doing it. I really appreciate your time and your effort in terms of just the way we're presenting it to the community and to the board tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a couple of similar points and questions. The understanding the CPI, this comes up every year, as you mentioned, we don't really know. and you anticipate an increase next year. You also stated that you anticipate the health insurance premium. So understanding that it is a two-budget cycle impact with the health insurance premiums, is it fair to say that you think that's going to continue to increase beyond the 2 years that we have planned for
Well,
going forward?
Yeah, I continue to expect those numbers to go up. I'm hoping, because we've actually had 2 years of higher than average increases in our active contributions, that they should settle a little bit and then at least back down. So that's why I'm kind of comfortable with 5%. We haven't been seeing those, they're much higher than anybody had ever thought they were going to be. So I would expect that they would come down a little bit.
Okay. And same is true for employer and teacher retirement. You said you're expecting an increase as well moving forward?
Yes, so the way each of those is done, those retirement systems have their own reserves and their own accounting policies for how they come up with those contribution rates. The employer's retirement system, which is civil service retirees, has been more consistent and more stable over time as far as what those rates have been. And for a number of years, they were higher than TRS rates, but they've been pretty much consistent. The teachers' retirement system rates have been all over the place. So the segment that I had put in the last 10 years, you saw how they started out a little higher, they came down a little bit. Those rates were at just about 0% in the early 2000s, and they shot up to close to 20%. So those rates are really all over the place. The way they do it is based on a 5-year average of their rate of returns at June 30th. So we look at that for every 5 years, and so we know what the last 4 years are. We don't know what it's going to be for this coming June. We look at the stock market and try to predict. So if the stock market, if we're looking at a 12-month increase in the stock market, and it's going to be a 2% increase, we can expect their returns are going to be somewhere in that ballpark. If there's a reduction of 10% in the stock market at June 30th from the previous June 30th, we can expect that rate that gets added in is going to be like a -10. So that averaged over 5 years is -2. So that would drop, or that would increase the rate if they have less money coming in, probably by 0.2%. So that's kind of what we're doing and looking at that. So we're not expecting a large change in that, should just be a nominal change, slightly up, slightly down. This year, they're slightly down, but overall, it's going to be an increase in our contributions.
So looking at all these long-term projections as best we can, it's just important to frame our conversations as you've done, not just for next year, but moving forward after that. It allows us to make decisions and plan effectively, given our economic reality and with the taxpayer in mind, as you say. So thank you. Comments or questions from board members?
Thank you. I appreciate the breaking down of this particular portion of the budget in ABCs, right? Your administrative, benefits, and capital, and then we'll get into curriculum next time we meet. But some of our buildings are 100 years old, right? We're having 100-year anniversaries, and keeping them, maintaining them, just as we do our homes, is important. In terms of the impact on the taxpayer, when we see that the budget itself is increasing 3.79%, it's important to notice that the tax levy is coming in at 1.99, under the 2.2%.
Correct.
2% or 2.21%.
Correct, with one caveat that I usually get into every year. So the changes in the Nassau County assessment system change those numbers. So while we put out a 1.99% increase, the average increase will be 1.99%. However, any individual homeowner may see a decrease in their taxes or a much larger increase in their taxes. The year we had a tax levy change of 0, I had numerous calls asking why their taxes went way up. And I said, we didn't increase your taxes. And I said, you need to call the assessor's office. And they said, we called the assessor's office, and they told us to call the school district. So this is the ongoing problem we have with the assessment system in Nassau County. It's very difficult for us to project what that will be. However, we can say that the average will be 1.99%.
Right, and so that may be dependent on someone's grievance of their own
Correct.
homeowner taxes.
Correct. If you've
Or the
grieved.
history of grievance, how many times have you done it, and where are you now?
Well, there's the different pieces. So you have grievances where you could reduce that, plus Nassau County has this phase-in program because their increases in their assessments have been so exorbitant to some people. As I said earlier, you used to have a $400,000 house, which is now valued at $1 million, and they can't jump that assessment all at once, so they're phasing it in over 5 years. So every year, you're having a 20% increase in your assessment, which makes a big difference in your taxes. So for 5 consecutive years, you're going to have tax increases. I guess it's better than having one large tax increase, but you're going to have 5 years of tax increases higher than the average.
That's completely out of our control.
Completely.
So I think that's the important thing to have, is that we're trying to maintain our portion of what impacts the homeowner to underneath the allowable levy, which is to keep it under that 2% tax cap. I think that's important to say, but as, Mr. Bartel says, if they've already changed the assessment on someone and they're trying to blend it in over 5 years, individuals may see that increase, depending on how that plays out for each individual homeowner.
And on that note of assessments affecting percentages, you mentioned that the state aid, so the foundation aid is separate, and we are being made whole from what we were owed from foundation aid.
Correct.
And then the BOCES, building and transportation aid are separate. They are state aid, but not foundation aid.
Correct.
Those are dependent on our home values. If our homes are valued more highly, we
So-
get less aid potentially there?
Yeah, there's 2 pieces to that. One, so those are expense-driven aids. So first, it depends on how much money we spend on those programs during the year. The second piece is the ratio that we get our state aid on. So that ratio has been increasing, fortunately for us, over the last several years, which is one of the reasons our tax levies increases have been much lower than our budget increases. We've had other sources of funding, a lot of it from state aid. But part of how those are calculated are based on income and wealth ratios. And with the increase in the assessments in Rockville Center, that causes a decrease in the aid ratios that we get. We're on a little bit of a lag. I believe it's a 5-year lag from the actual assessment that goes into the calculation. So I think that's why it's starting to hit us now, because our numbers had been going up for our ratio numbers. This is the first year in a while that it's gone back down. And it went down by, like I said, 2 percentage points. So,
And in the $2.5 million transfer to capital, from reserves to capital, you're confident we can fund the roof, the entire roof at the middle school and the field renovation?
yes,
Okay, and those are separate from the tax levy, because we're moving that money over from,
well, $2.5 million it's part of, so we had 1.8 million, so our total in our transfer to capital line is 4.3.
including what we usually move over anyway.
Right, correct. So part of that 1.8 that we usually use is going to go towards that. Believe it's 1.6, 1. It's 3.5 and a couple $100,000 in architects. So about 3.7 total is going to cover the field and the roof, which leaves us about 600,000 for the other projects that
That you listed,
I was talking
school by
about.
school, right. And then I guess my last question, great to see 6 new teams coming in terms of gym space. Can we accommodate these teams that we're planning on adding?
We can.
Tightly.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but one of the things that we're talking about is looping Watson in as a potential site for some practices for one of our middle school teams, particularly the volleyball team. So we are doing, it's a minor upgrade. It allows the volleyball stanchions to be placed in the floor safely. So that's like a very minor upgrade that we would have to do to Watson's gym. And then we have to have a conversation with the after-school program about this particular piece at Watson, we're gonna need the gym from this period to this period at this time. So, you know, we're trying to expand something that's close enough to the middle school that would still make it practical, you know, for a practice space, but that would be one way we're doing it. The other thing, middle school track can be outdoors, you know? It's cold sometimes, but if it's a winter like this, it can be outdoors, the middle school track, so that doesn't really impact our gym space. Volleyball does, and then cheerleading, you know, we're gonna try to work that in as well. But again, you know, gym space is at a premium right now. There is no doubt that it is at a premium. We just walked past all the kids in the hallway practicing for red and blue, and I heard one of them saying, "Hurry up, we don't have much time left before we have to switch." You know, that's what, you know, a couple of the girls were saying, like, we have to get this done. So you want our kids to have the ability to do the activities that, you know, they want and that we want to support.
Thank you.
I'm going to piggyback just quickly, circling back. Can we just get an idea of when the JV volleyball and middle school volleyball seasons would be?
JV volleyball, I believe, is the same time as the boys volleyball, which is in the fall. And then the middle school boys volleyball, I have to double check. I'm not sure if that's winter 2 or winter 1. Is it winter? It's right now, okay.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Mr. Bartels, and I think this is, you know, the epitome of transparency, and just, I know it's hard, and you spoke for a full hour, but going through it, I mean, really, I think you should get a goat sweatshirt.
For me, that's a lot.
They make, you need a goat sweatshirt. They make one with money bags on
Yeah,
it. I think we should get that from Mr. Bartels. But thank you. It was really helpful. Some of my questions were answered, so I'll skip those. But a lot of what I'm really interested in, and I think is so hard as you kind of look at these charts, the things that you have to kind of plan ahead for. So when you're talking about, I mean, even supply chain issues and increased costs of construction materials and things, how do you account for something like that when you're starting to build these budget lines bottom up? And we're kind of planning ahead for some of, I mean, we do the POs on the finance committee, and sometimes we question back, why is this so much money? That's what they cost now, that's what signage costs, or this is what this product costs now. And we get sticker shock sometimes. I'm wondering, how do you calculate and account for that going forward?
It's hard. A lot of times we'll add in some sort of percentage. So as you said, a lot of times we find delivery costs have gone through the roof because of transportation costs and just, you know, it makes everything more expensive. Things become scarcer. A lot of times over the past several years, things just weren't on shelves, and you have to go and find them, and they cost more money. We're just getting a electrical fuse for the administration building, and it's one of the newer ones. Can't just get it at Home Depot, so we had to go to a supplier. Supplier's out of them, so we're searching all over the place. We had to buy one from a place that we didn't normally deal with, just to get the project done, and it's costing probably a 40 or 50% markup because we couldn't find it anyplace else. So every time we do the budget, we try to allow for a little bit of extra in there to account for some of these things. That is, you know, one of the ways we hope to come up with our 2.8 million at the end of the year, so that we know we have enough in there, so that, you know, if we don't spend it, that's just going to come back and help us fund the following year's budget. We do different things during the year to try to contain the budget, you know, so if we find we're overexpending a number of lines, we may cut off purchasing at a certain point in the year and just say, that's it. We're not buying any more equipment, we're not buying any more supplies, we just got to make do for the rest of the year. So depending on how the year's going, that's, you know, we kind of play that by ear as we go through. But for the most part, we just try to build it in.
Okay.
And that's why we were talking about, you know, for the big projects, trying to get ahead of the line. So if everyone in Long Island wants to do a field, you want to make sure that we can get started, you know, as close to the end of the school year as humanly possible, to make sure that all the work is done, because there is urgency. Same thing for roofing. Roofing materials, we have 3 or 4 different types of material that's involved in the roof. We want to make sure that once that budget is passed, all the necessary material is ordered. and the budget is approved and passed, that everything is ordered so that we have, all of our ducks, so to speak, lined up.
Yeah, we've done that with our elevator upgrades. We have everything ready to go. We wanted to make sure they were delivered by like now. So we would have them, and they're being stored for us, so they're ready to go right away. And some things are more critical than others. So, for example, last summer, we had auditorium projector replacements. They didn't come in, again, because of supply chain issues, but they came in during the year. We were able to put them in October, November, so those are finally installed, but it wasn't as, it would have been nice to have them for October, but not as critical. A roof, something like that, has to be done
When
by the time
students are
school
You can
starts.
open without a projector, you can't
Yeah.
open without a roof,
Right.
absolutely.
So,
Well, thank you. So I know you're keeping your eye on it. So we know the COVID funding is being pulled back now, and, while it's great to get so much more state aid, you have the same issue. You start building up a budget that, works with this increase of money. Are we taking on anything in our program, additions, or anything that we can't sustain going forward? Because I think that we always, the public's going to want to understand that they're not voting on a budget just for this year, but we're taking on new things. What's sustainable, and how are we looking at that sustainability?
right, so some of the COVID funding enabled us to do new programs, such as some of our before and after-school programs and the Regents Review. Other sources of the funding allowed us to, what they call, supplant other funding. So paying for things that were in the budget just with COVID funding. So it basically, that was one of the ways we were able to build up our fund balance over the last 3 years. So that's how we kind of utilize that. We are not going to need it going forward. Most of those items are in the budget. The different things that we're adding, pieces for Regents Review to support that, our before-school and after-school programs, those were some of the smaller impacts. So we're fully confident we can sustain those going forward. I don't think that's going to be a problem. We've had other things for like the remote instruction and so forth. Those are things that happened last year. We have no intention of continuing those things. We have enough issues with those, so those are expenses that are not going to continue anyway, so we don't have those in the budget.
I'm thinking more, we're getting an increase in state aid, and we're proposing new things for the next school year budget. So state aid next year is, a portion of what we got this year, a small portion, because this year, almost close to 20%. If it's 5% next year, and now we lose that funding, are we still, everything we're putting into the budget for next year, is that sustainable? That's what I'm asking.
Yes, I believe it is. The difference is going to be how much we can contribute to fund balance. So it's going to be tighter to make those numbers. But within the budget and being able to roll budgets forward in a manageable way without spiking anything or exceeding the tax cap, I think we're very comfortable.
Okay,
Going
good.
forward.
Thank you. And my last question was, when will we get a, normally maybe it's early now, but will we get a kind of line by line of the capital improvements and what they would cost? Because right now, we're kind of saying these buildings are looking for these things, and then we kind of look at the cost and say, okay, out of the 8 things that Hewitt needs, we're only able to do these 5 right now, and we're putting some of these on the back burner, or maybe look at how the year goes. At what point in the process will we see some of the actual costs and what we're finalizing on?
Yeah, so this was kind of the first round. We identified the projects we wanted to put in there. We're in the process of getting numbers. We have numbers for some of them, but we still have to pick up numbers for others. We could probably have estimates, ballpark estimates, by the next meeting.
Okay.
I can include that, as just a kind of an update from this meeting, and just have a list of, what the numbers are for all those.
Thank
I
you.
think we'd also be more confident on like ceiling replacements and
Right.
floors, because we've been doing that and
Right.
kind of price that in a little bit better. And so a different type of project where it might be a completely new type of work.
Right. And just for assurance, we did the board tours, but if there was anything that was kind of imminent and needed to be done now, we're looking, because I was a little concerned when I see fire alarm system upgrades, kind of putting under a bond. That to me is, I know if we have some issues with upgrades that need to be done for safety, we're still looking at those things in the immediate, and we're taking care of those things, so the
They're all
public doesn't
func-
feel like we're
Right.
pushing
Yes.
that down the road.
They're all functioning, like, so I don't want anyone to think that
Right.
with a new fire alarm, it's not functioning.
Right.
That's not the case at all. But there are new systems, like the PA system.
Mm-hmm.
There are new systems that are, again, more efficient with more capabilities than some of the PAs that could even be going back to, 10, 15, 25 years ago when they were installed in an elementary school or the high school. So it's really about, what's an upgrade and what is actually something that's not functioning. So if there was a fire alarm that's not functioning, we're fixing it now.
Perfect.
Like,
Yep.
end of story.
So that was actually one
Yeah.
of the increases I had up there was our maintenance contracts increases. So that's what that would fall under.
Okay.
So if there is something like that, we're going to repair, we may not be able to replace it because of the cost,
Right.
but we have enough money in there to get people in to replace, to repair it, to make sure it's working properly.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Mr. Bartels, and not only for what you do here and that everyone gets to see, but I don't know if everyone understands that when the public writes to you or calls you, how responsive you are. And to each board member, I know I've called you and asked you questions and had you explain them in small bits for me. And I really appreciate that, everything you do to reach out to people who do have questions, how quickly you respond, and how thoroughly you respond. So thanks.
Thank you.
My questions were more looking at the budget document that was attached to our agenda. I just had some specific things that jumped out when I looked at them. One was conference expenses went from 400 to 3,840 to 5,200. And I was assuming the 400 to the 3,800 was probably because in COVID there weren't any
Right.
conferences.
Correct.
But why the jump after that? What?
We just wanted to make sure there was enough money in there for board expenses should all the board members want to go to conferences. There's probably a little bit extra in there. If we need to pull, a few thousand out, I could probably do that, but I just wanted to make sure there was enough in there to cover if all board members were going to.
So it's like a cushion, it's not that you expect necessarily that all of that would be used?
Correct. It was just one of those areas that I kind of looked at and I said, I just want to make sure, because there were a lot of conferences people didn't go to. Some people went during COVID, some people didn't. I just want to make sure we had enough in there for that.
Okay. And the administrative salary you had spoken about, we had the new position. Is there an offset from the other position of the director of curriculum that is vacant for that?
So, Mr. Murphy moved into personnel, so his salary is now in there. I had a portion of my salary in there, which is now back in 1310, which is, another part of my salary. Another portion of my salary is also under transportation, because we can get aid on a certain portion of my salary, so that's why we have that there. Director of curriculum position is still in the budget. We have not replaced that yet.
That's something that, with Dr. Hood leaving mid-year, we wanted to really think about, the position itself, how best, if there are different options to support Dr. Moriarty and Ms. Love and Mr. Murphy in their work. So that's something that's still ongoing. I think it's a little premature to kind of give a recommendation yet. We're still talking about it as a cabinet. But it's something that we wanted to include in the budget for next year, because we do think ultimately we're going to need to replace, if not that exact position, but to replace that support that Dr. Hood has always provided for us.
And also, the one piece that there is a reduction in is Rachel Green, who was in special education. She moved to assistant principal. So that money that was in the special education administration budget is not there. That is now back, it's really gone, and her salary is now within the high school administration.
So if you're talking about offset,
Yeah.
we are still one administrator, like we're even from where we were at the beginning of the year.
Okay. Under BOCES administration, there's a jump from 28,800 to 70,000. It just seemed like it was glaring, but I know you probably have an answer for it.
Yeah, those were BOCES expenditures for personnel. We have a system called Frontline that we use in personnel to track attendance and a lot of our human resources documentation. And we're doing a number of different upgrades in that area that Mr. Murphy has been, on top of, to make sure all of our human resources pieces are computerized. We had so many things that were, in paper form, and we're trying to automate all those things. So starting with, as people come in, the applications they fill out and everything are online. So there was a big increase due to that. There are some other pieces in there with smaller portions of those budgets. There's the Global Compliance Network, which is, we have various trainings that all school district personnel are required to go through each year. Those are, we take care of that through internet training, online training. People go through, they do that, and this program kind of manages that and organizes that, and creates the training programs for that. There's also negotiation information systems. Nassau County BOCES will provide us with information on other contracts within Nassau County for different bargaining units. Also, our online application system called OLAS, which is how teachers typically apply to school districts nowadays. So there's a lot of other little pieces that are in there. But the big increase is really that push from frontline for the human resources documentation.
And that goes back to Mr. Murphy's, presentation where he talked about automating systems. So we've been trying to automate systems and use existing systems that we have and leveraging all the features to make things work better and smoothly here.
And in terms of it being BOCES, is any of that aidable?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
all
it is.
all aidable.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good. I saw that the custodians at Covert had a jump from 135 and changed to 207, and the other schools seemed to be stable. Was there an issue there?
Yeah, it was actually budgeted incorrectly for this year. There were only 2 custodial positions budgeted for the current school year under that budget code, and there are 3 custodians there, so we're actually overspending that budget for this year. So this really just brings it in line to where it should be.
So it's just even in where it should be?
Correct.
Got it. And then my overall question was, what impact does the $20 million in state aid have on the tax rate?
So the $20 million actually, it allows us to keep the tax rate down. It allows us to keep, I mentioned our tax levy limit actually increased, but we don't have to increase the tax levy. We want to keep it at 1.99%. We could increase it by another $300,000. We have no intention of doing that, and that's one of the reasons we have that money, that funding that can cover that. It's also going a long way to offset the loss of the COVID funding, again, to blend in those increases. So some of the COVID funding is now being replaced by state aid funding. So it's kind of blending that increase going forward.
Thank you. The other one was about debt service, but you answered it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartels, for your presentation. I feel like most of my questions have already been asked and answered. Just a couple of small ones. I noticed in the presentation, we addressed the majority of our facilities, but the greenhouse wasn't on there. I know we had toured that building, and there weren't any significant capital improvements that I think we noted, but I do think it's important just to make note that we're focusing on the furniture, specifically the desks, that we're either replacing them with something currently in district that we have, but just updating what's there. And also with regards to the men's bathroom, that we're either using the closet that is there and repurposing it for storage, or building a closet for storage of those supplies that were out that should probably
Yeah,
be
we
stored somewhere.
we have looked at that, the furniture. We have upgraded some of that furniture this year. There are additional spaces, as you know, since we did the tour, that we're going to be updating. So the money for the furniture is in there. That's not really within the capital. It's
Okay.
not separate
That'll be the
furniture.
the equipment
Yeah.
kind of component.
So that's being covered. And as far as the bathrooms, we're still looking at that as to exactly what the best way to maximize the use of that space will be.
Okay.
But we will be making some adjustments there as well.
Great, thank you. I was also similar to Mrs. Hackett with the fire alarm system upgrades, just something a question that, it's not really budget related, but do we do audits of our alarm system, our PA system in all of the buildings regularly to ensure that all spaces can hear those announcements? Like, I know that in many of our elementary schools, we are using every available space, that if there was an emergency, that we know for sure that everyone can hear that, like we conduct
So-
audits for that?
So I don't necessarily know if I would call it an audit, but, as part of, when we were, Ms. Hackett and I were going through Watson, one of the things that we found as we were going through, and this is the reason you see PA systems on there, was that the PA system in the PE office is actually like a relay that you couldn't really hear out in the main gym. So that's, again, one of these issues that, when it was brought to our attention, we're already working on fixing it and upgrading it. So I don't know if I would call it an audit as such, but as part of, our walkthrough and conversations with the principal, as part of what Mr. Bartels does in going through with Mr. Scalisi, all the different buildings about what are you thinking about, what are the issues that you have. We do that regularly as part of the budget process. I don't know if I would necessarily, would you say that we've separated out the PA systems or the fire alarm as
No.
something separate, but it's always been kind of looped in?
The PA systems are more requests from the building principals. They let us know when those issues arise and if we need to make modifications. The fire alarm systems are gone through every year with the fire marshal, so he does test all of our fire alarm systems every year. So we go through and we do that. We also have our safety drills that go through, so we do make sure that all of those are working. We have had instances during fire drills where some people can't hear the fire drill, and we've had to make changes there and move some of those speakers. So that does happen on a routine basis. The PA systems are more based on requests from the buildings.
Yeah, that's just like a concern in case there was some kind of an emergency and somebody wasn't able to hear that there was an emergency and it wasn't a typical alarm that was going off, just to ensure that all of those spaces, that people are aware. Thanks. And then the last question I had relates more to our pre-K. So we're not able to access all of the funding because we don't have the space to host the amount of children to pull in that funding. If we were to bring pre-K in-house, perhaps in the future, would we be able to then access all of that funding and then utilize the funding in
Yes.
the way that we saw fit to use it?
Yeah, we could access all the funding because we could then supplement the funding. So we can't give funding to these other pre-K programs and then ask parents to pay the difference. And we can't pay
Yeah.
that difference to utilize that funding. However, if we're running the program, the funding comes to us, we provide the program separately, we don't charge the parents anything, so we can utilize that funding.
Okay. And then the last question I had was just with the Regents Review courses. What is the fee that we're charging this year for those? Do we know that?
Was it 90?
90, yeah.
I think it was 90. 90?
So it's
90, again, it's $90, but again, it's a sliding scale, and there's, if there are students that need scholarships, we provide.
So it's $90 per course. And there's no way to ensure that these classes are offered for free?
Well, the problem that we had offering them for free was that people would sign up. Some people actually signed up for one course 3 different times, each time it was offered. So our administrators had to lock them out and put them in one course, and we still, even with that, had some students who were being knocked out of the live courses and had to sign up for online courses if they wanted to do that because of the lack of teachers that we had available to do that. And we searched high and low for a number of teachers, and some of the subjects, we just weren't able to get them, so we had to go to online courses. So we felt we had to charge some sort of a fee. We didn't want to make it the full fee that we had charged in the past, but we wanted to make it enough where parents aren't just going to throw the money in just to have the kids sign up and then not have them show up.
That's the other piece, is
So-
creating kind of inefficiencies with staffing, because people would sign
Right.
up for multiple courses and not go. And so we would staff it for what we thought it was going to be.
Right.
And then, let's say there was 10 kids in the class, 4 kids showed up regularly. So but we're paying for that teacher for 10 kids, or we're paying for that teacher for a second section, kind of thing. So this was done in conversation with the high school admin, because that was one of the issues that they were running into over and over again. But again, if there's anyone that we think should be in the class and would need support in terms of financial support for this, there's something that Dr. Walsh and the high school social workers are already on, along with the guidance counselors, and no one will be turned away because they didn't pay for a class. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm still concerned about charging money for Regents Review courses. Do we know if other school districts charge for Regents Review courses? Like, is this a typical practice that we would have some kind of a fee? I mean, I know, I'm pretty sure in my district, I don't believe that they charge for Regents Review classes. I just feel
I
like
don't
if
know
you're
that- I
a
don't
kid who
know-
has 3 classes, and I'm a parent who could afford to pay it, it's almost $300 I'm paying for a course that if other districts are offering for free, I do think that we should look into that and really ensure that we're,
I wouldn't speak for every district. I'm not as informed about what other people have done. I know that there are districts that charge for different types of, like, SAT prep and things like that, where people are doing prep classes. This is along those lines. So while I can't, I know that people even have done, like, AP review classes or IB review classes for stuff. This is along those lines, but I don't want to, I can't really speak intelligently about what everyone has done. But again, this was done to solve a problem of inefficient staffing and then overspending on something, on a program for support for kids. What we want to do is make sure that we have an efficient use of funds, and again, provide students that have that need the support in terms of financial, we can do that.
could we also look in to see if other school districts charge for Regents Review courses as well? I'm just concerned because it's a requirement to graduate from high school. It's not an AP or an IB or an SAT. This is a requirement to graduate from high school, and I just want to make sure that the course is available. I understand that we can supplement fees, but I just have the concern about the charge for it. So if we could look into it, that would be great. Thanks.
So on the March 9th budget presentation, which deals with curriculum, can you make a recommendation at that time regarding the Regents Review classes? Also, on the March 9th meeting, can the board just get an update to ensure that all the PA systems in each building are functioning okay, and the fire, just if the fire alarms need to be addressed, that they are addressed? Thank you. Anything else? All right, turning to the public work session portion. We have policies and superintendent's regulations. At stage 1, 7160, assignment of students to schools. This was something that had come up in the fall, and we said we would be reviewing this policy. We asked council to review the policy. As it was on the books, as it existed at the beginning of the school year, it was 2 different. It was basically the assignment and then the procedure to which parents could use or guardians could use to file an appeal to superintendent's decision regarding zoning exemptions. So I'm going to ask Mr. Barnowski if you could just walk us through this first.
Sure, well, it's very simple. It's just what you described, is that we had 2 separate entities, and we combined the 2 with no substantive changes. So the red line portion, which appears before you, was previously in your reg, and now will be in one place in the policy, because that was the will of the board to make it simplified, I believe. So that's really my only comment, is we implemented that by combining them with no substantive changes.
Right, so first I'll ask if any board members have comments or questions regarding the policy before we move through.
One question I had was, it says on the first page about how siblings would be, requests would be handled separately. Is that the case for each one of the scenarios that follows later? So new entrants, moving within district, in every scenario, we're saying that we're treating siblings separately?
So for example, let's say there are 3 children, and the families move, but only one of them would be a 5th grader that year. So under a policy, if you are a 5th grader, you're allowed to stay in your school, and that would be an exemption. The other 2 students would be a separate zoning request, which would not fall under that policy. Same thing might go if there might be a student with special needs that needs a particular program that's housed at a particular school. The siblings wouldn't necessarily get that same zoning request. So because one student applies to the policy in that we only host a particular program at one building. So we would make that allowance for one, but not necessarily the siblings in that case.
In those scenarios, I understand. I think I'm curious about how you feel about new entrants. So in that same scenario, all students just being 3 students in a family, coming in as a new entrant, 2 of them are babies, one of them's a kindergartner. What happens to baby 2 and 3? Every time now they're about to approach kindergarten, they have to go through this process again? Or because baby number 1 has been accepted to Watson, 2 and 3 automatically come to Watson as a new
No, I
entrant?
think we would look at each one as a separate request, depending on what the unique circumstances for that would be. I don't think we would, just grandfather in, whole families. It has to be looked on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, that's definitely different than what we've done, so just, mentioning that, especially with new entrants, we looked at it as more of an entity, that once they were a family of that district, they would be a family of that district, but we're going to
Meaning
be.
the zone to an elementary school? Well, you mean like where their address is?
We had cases where.
Or maybe I'm not following. you.
Okay, in the past, we had, buildings that had kind of emptier rooms. So when they were coming in as new entrants, if they requested to go to a building that had lower class sizes for some particular reason, we might grant them that request. So what my question was is, if they were granted that because we had the space and the ability for them to do that from the get-go, now when the other siblings come up, we're looking at that case by case, but not saying from the beginning,
Right.
okay, now this is going to be a Watson family or a Wilson family. That's the question.
Okay, so I think then that kind of backs up a little bit, because I think really the only reason I would give or make a recommendation to the board about a zoning exemption would be for the two reasons I gave you: a fifth grader or a student with special needs. That's specific. I don't think, I know that there are going to be times when this policy might cause us to have to make a class someplace or have a lower number somewhere else, but I think it's important for us to stay consistent with how we treat new entrants and where they go. So if they are zoned for Watson, they're going to be zoned for Watson, with the exception of the two things that I said before.
Okay.
Is there a separate policy, or is the only means of appeal where it says if the family disagrees with the determination of the superintendent of schools, the family can appeal the decision in writing to the Board of Education? So it's just that they write in what their reasons are to the board, and the board votes on it, all of the board members? How does that work?
Well,
Or
I
is
think
there a
it's like-
separate policy for it?
Well, under the law, basically any determination of the superintendent can be appealed to the Board of Education and then to the Commission of Education. I don't know off the top of my head whether you have, that's the law, whether there's a separate procedures for that in your policy book. I don't think so.
No, the policy ends by
Right.
saying decisions
No,
on
no,
all
no.
zoning.
No, but I think the question was, is there some other policy says that here's the procedure for appealing any determination of the
Right.
superintendent of schools? I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think so. But the law is, it goes in that fashion.
Right, it goes from the superintendent to the board, and the board makes the
Yes.
determination. But there's no procedure written in our policy manual.
Now,
that
and,
deals
there
with
are some
that.
sections of the law that have time periods, et cetera, student discipline, suspensions, there's a 30 days to go to the commissioner. I don't think there's anything applicable on this.
My concern was that it was connected to some other policy that laid something out. That's
We
why
had
I
a
was asking.
regulation that laid it out. It was a separate document, which was a regulation.
That got merged
That got
into
merged
this.
in, yeah. So there was, and now he put it in here.
Mrs. Celebrity, are we confident, or can we at least for the next meeting, double check just to make sure that there's no other policies that?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
So we're going to keep that at state.
I think so. Yep.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay.
Policy-
8450, I assume, was occasioned by a new regulation which was promulgated effective July 1st that increases the amount of minimum number of hours for home instruction to 10 for the elementary level and 15 at the high school. The rest of the revisions here, I think, are just stylistic. The preamble is taken care of in the body of the policy, and I think the temporary instruction is fine. So I assume this is just a review in light of the new regulation. Is that right, Jeannie?
Yes. The policy that was on the books is just the red part that's now removed. Ms. Love, anything else you want to add?
No.
Any comments or questions?
So it's just a review and clean up in light of new regulation effective July 1.
Thank you. Okay to move this one to stage 2? At stage 2, 7522 concussion management. This incorporates the suggested changes that were made from the board at our last meeting. Did anyone else have anything else to add on this one?
So the only comment on that was the one minor change to make persons in parental relation parents, which is consistent language throughout the entire policy.
Correct. Okay to move this one? Okay, thank you. Stage 3, probation and tenure.
So I know you discussed this, but obviously your old policy was pre-APBR, and
Yes.
you did a complete do-over, and I assume this was taken from Erie 1 BOCES, and I've reviewed it, and it seems fine.
Great, thank you. Okay to move this one to the next stage?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the financial reports as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the receipt of financial reports?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve items for action 1 through 7?
So moved.
Second?
Second, but are we going to comment on the calendar?
right.
Mr. Gavin, do you want to comment on the
Sure.
calendar? Thanks.
So last time, we talked about the calendar, that there was a potential conflict between IB exam dates and religious holidays, particularly Passover and the April break. Since that time, the BOCES calendar has come out, and we're recommending that our calendar stay consistent with the BOCES calendar, which would allow us to have those two, the Monday and Tuesday, the second Monday and Tuesday, the last 2 days of Passover, as vacation days. We know that there is the potential that there might be conflicts with a few exams. We don't have the finalized IB schedule, so I can't tell you with confidence what those exams might be. I can guess, but in that case, one of the things we would do is make sure we're communicating early and often to our students in in those classes, that they may have to come in, just like they would for a lacrosse practice or a baseball practice, they may have to come in to take an exam on an off day. And so already we're working with Mr. Murphy and Dr. Walsh to make sure that we have contingency set up for those things. But in balancing the needs of 3,600 students and the potential where we don't actually know which courses are going to be assessed on those days, I felt it prudent that we stay in line with the BOCES calendar, and we are respectful for the religious traditions of many in the Rockville Center District.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did I have
I said
any
a
questions?
second,
Okay.
yeah. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Our next meeting is a regular meeting, and that will be on March 9th.